What's up, Copy Squad? We are here for episode 15 of the Kyle Milligan Show with Aaron Gentzler. We were just chatting about a little bit of everything. The missing piece of swag being the third button being undone on shirts for all those who weren't aware.
Yeah,
That's my tip, Aaron.
very difficult to pull off. I only do two. Kyle can get away with three. That's a different level entirely, for sure.
So I actually do salsa classes and salsa dancing. And so I follow these Instagram pages that have people dancing. And I saw a guy who had his shirt undone, and I noticed he had a completely barren chest, and it just looked sort of icky. It just looked sort of like a newborn chest. Like it was kind of gross and boyish and wasn't good.
Well, you doing your part to bring back the, Magnum PI mid '80s Tom Selleck look. Like that's good. You gotta do your part, contribute to the conversation. That's good that you take dancing too. It's good to be, have varied skill sets like that. It's nice.
Well, like you can sort of see glimpses of it, like through this podcast, through going to dance class, through the shirt. Cause on the Kevin Rogers episode, I actually went into depth about what's going on with the shirt. And it's funny because we were just in Baltimore where I last bumped into you. And we had all these like investment bankers or these resource investors on stage. And I went up there with my shirt all unbuttoned and said my piece. And then afterwards, like this one guy did come up to me. He was like, I fucking love this guy. He's like, you're like over there telling people their pitch decks are no good. And these guys are like, OGs. And you're like coming up there with your shirt, your flower shirt all undone. Like, I don't give a fuck. And I was like, I had actually been doing the shirt unbuttoned like this for so long that I basically just forgotten that I do it. It's kind of just like, I just do it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the shirt, the buttons, the podcast is all exercise in trying to burst my sort of copywriter introvert bubble, like pierce that veil. You know what I mean?
Can I ask you a question before we really get rolling here?
Dude, this is a conversation.
Why do you feel as though you need to burst a copywriter introvert bubble? Knowing you, 6-7 years, I never would have taken you for an introvert. So, through the, what you do in the copy and marketing community, down to your dress, your presentation, how you speak, and why did you have the sense that you were introverted, and then much less like what led you to say that you wanted to break that?
There's two parts to that. So the first is like my definition of introversion, which is the energy argument, which is like an introvert is a person who needs to be solo, needs to be alone and isolated in order to recharge. And like an extrovert would be a person who would go into energy, go into crowds, go into boisterous to get there. Like, oh, I'm tired. I need to go out and party or something to get riled up. And so by that regard, introvert. The other thing is I found a lot of my introvert qualities I took deep pride in were actually, I don't know, like they were almost like defenses for avoiding people, conversations. So like one of those, the most stark example would be audiobooks. I've been listening to audiobooks since maybe like 2014. And I would do it even in the presence of my friends. It was almost like a running gag because it used to be you had these wired headphones and then they got the Bluetooth, they sit around your neck. And I'd always have that, always, no matter what we were doing. Because if there was like a pause or a gap, I'd just pop in an earbud and I'd listen to an audiobook. And then I would go to the gym. And so I'd be double productive. I'd be listening to some audiobook. I'd be working out. And it got to like, there was like a bunch of life convergences where I was sort of like looking at my social circle, like when I struck out on my own too as an agency, as opposed to like being able to show up to an office like Agora every day where I'm forced to be surrounded by people. It was like I was further and further and further and further isolating myself like all the time.
Yep.
So one day I took the earbuds off at the gym and I said, no more listening to audio. But I'm going to talk to people at the gym and see how it goes, and kind of just been riding that wave.
How'd it go? Did you make friends? Have you built connections, relationships doing that?
So I was just talking to a guy this morning, and it was funny. He's like, "Yeah, you really come a long way," because the initial attempt was not very successful. I didn't know how to communicate with strangers casually. I know how to talk to people at work. I know how to present on my YouTube channel where I'm the expert. I know how to do all that.
Yeah,
So how do you say hi to a stranger? And then like, why? Everything was like, why? Why even
yeah.
do it? So
Are
when
you sorry, can I interrupt again? Are you one of those
yeah.
people who, like, when you do make a connection like that, do you completely skip over small talk and like ask them like some like deep question and get right into it and like try to learn about the person? Or do you find small talk like, what do you think of Biden, blah blah blah, or the weather? Yeah, like, do you find that easy or hard? Because small
Oh,
talk
that
like that, small talk can be painful in the wrong situation, especially when you don't know somebody. You know what I mean? Like,
mhm.
so, like, what do you do? Did you get better with the small talk, or do you go right to the deep stuff and like try to learn something right away?
It's a combination of both. I'm the guy that jumps into deep talk 100%.
Yeah,
What I've learned to do though is take it in more positive directions. I'll tell you a story about a date I was on where I noticed my going too deep too fast but backfiring.
yeah, sure.
So I met a girl at a coffee shop for a date, and we were talking. Coffee shop closes. Like, let's go sit in my car and talk in the car. And we're watching YouTube videos. She's a dancer, and she's like showing me like these YouTube videos and this special, like, these different ballets and dance videos and stuff like that. And then we're talking, and before I know it, she's crying and telling me some deep trauma from her childhood. And I remember like when this was happening, I was like, God, I was like, this is like the third date in a row. Like, I was like, what is wrong with the women that I'm selecting? And the more I
So
thought
was
about
it?
it, the more
That was the third
I.
first date in a row that you made cry inadvertently.
Yes,
Yeah,
like we've got like so deep that someone
yeah.
started
You
shedding
might want to get
tears.
that looked at. You might want to get that checked out. That could be something you want to talk about. Yeah.
So
No,
after
I'm
the
kidding. Go ahead.
third, yeah, after the third time, I started evaluating. It's like, well, there's a common denominator here, right? So uh, I was like, well, let's evaluate. Let's go back. Like, what do my conversations look like? Where are there forks in the road that I took this path and I could have took that?
Yep.
And I figured it out. It all comes down to validation, and I realized I am extremely. I value vulnerability and authenticity. And what would happen is there would be a moment in the conversation where the girl would say something real. She dropped the bullshit, dropped the small talk, and I would immediately pull attention to it. And I'd be like, wow, hey, you know what? All jokes aside, like, it's really great getting to know you, but it was really cool that you are comfortable sharing, XYZ with me, And then next thing you know, more of that would pop up, and I would say, "Oh wow, I feel like you're a real person. Like, a lot of people are just bullshit and small talk." And then next thing you know, more would come and it'd be deeper. Like, I would be feeding her
Yep.
these little validation tablets in that direction until inevitably we would just go to the deepest thing that she could, the most vulnerable thing that she could reveal, and it would always end up there.
So what? All right. So that date, the coffee shop closes. You're watching YouTube videos in your car. It gets emotional.
Mhm.
I have to ask, did that lead to a second date, or was that the conclusion of that investigation?
So there was a second date, yeah, and I mean,
Did you
like,
guys do so? Did you take it down a notch? Did you do something fun, like just go play paintball or something, and just like just get active and like not talk? Did you do something fun?
yeah, we actually the second date was dancing. We went to a
Okay.
Latin night.
All right. All
So
right.
yeah, but also those kinds of conversations create, I mean, essentially trauma bonds, very intense connections. Where it's like you're not like other guys. Like, oh my god, I've never told anybody this, and then you're in a category of one. You have a USP, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a fine line. You got to be. I mean, I see the intelligence in it. You can, I mean, these. I don't not to be a craven marketer and bring it directly back to marketing techniques, but
hmm
you're setting a hook to be in a category of one and building, a strong emotional bond quickly. That's a good hook. That's a good lead, but you got to be careful. You got to be careful with that too, because that can go a variety of directions. It can go sideways on you pretty quick too.
Well, it's not. Well, I want it to be fun too, so it wasn't enjoyable. So once I recognized the pattern, I even talked to Manny about this. I was like, I shared with him.
Manny's a smart dude. He gave you good advice. I'm positive. Manny led you in the right direction. What Manny said.
Well, we just kind of like batted it back and forth, and ultimately what we landed on was like, well, if that's what's causing the conversations to go there, well, then now you have the power to cause a conversation to go somewhere more optimistic and positive by just realizing what you're validating, and then just validate something different that causes the conversation to have an upward spiral instead of a downward spiral.
Look at Manny. That's smart. That's good. That's a way to work through the problem. That's good. So are you still seeing this lady, or was this just like a moment in time type thing?
This was a moment. This was early, like when I got back in the dating game, and I had to do a lot of like figuring things out, and I was not good. Trial and error, man. Trial and error.
Yeah. The thing, I'm hoping that at some point in this conversation you'll ask me a question, but I'm gonna say something about you, and I'm gonna ask you another question.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that has always really impressed me about you, and you're talking about it right now, is you strike me as a seeker who's always looking for what's next, what's bigger, what's going to be around the corner. And you've never struck me as someone who's satisfied with whatever the station is right now. I've followed for some time the amount of content that you put out. You don't have to do that. And I know that you have ends that serves for you, what you do, but you have something to say. You have a viewpoint, you have a stance on the industry, you have a stance on the work. And you communicate that because you're always looking for what's next. You're seeking for that next thing. And what's that next opportunity going to be? What's that next evolution going to look like? So I've always had a lot of respect for that. And what you're talking about to me, and again, I'm no psychologist or anything, but what you're talking about is that impulse that you have, that instinct just coming out in your life in different ways, So this is what my question is. Like, do you find doing work like this, like having conversations with people in the industry, do you find that that's helpful to like this mission, this quest that you're on, or does it lead you down a lot of like dark alleys and side roads and stuff, and now you feel mixed up again? You know what I mean?
Specifically, like the podcast, like chatting with folks and having these sorts of conversations.
Well, yeah, just like the seeker, which is like the category. And again, I'm just armchairing you here. The seeker mentality can, like, they go deep and they want to look at things and they want to investigate things. And they want to find out, the angles, but then you can go different directions. You end up a lot of dead ends, and you're like, oh, you get really into, I'm going to go learn whatever I can about whatever personal improvement technique. And then you get there and you're like, wait a second, that's empty. I got to come all the way back. I got to do that work again, stuff like that. So I don't know. Do you find that happens to you a lot?
I would say probably. I think because of the way that I look at things, I do often find myself feeling misunderstood, because I'm thinking about a specific individual in my friend group who has this view of like the way that I approach the world, and it's almost like it's always slanted like negatively, because he has sort of like I wonder how to put it, like a stereotype of like, if I'm going on multiple dates, like it must mean that they're all shallow and I don't treat women well, and I do this, and it's like so there's kinds of elements of that. Then there's also elements of that in any trial and error sort of situation where you're trying something and you're sort of throwing darts in the dark. You have to sort of run into a lot of failure before you realize, like, find out what's that one variable that's causing all the failure. And then you kind of are pissed off or kicking yourself for lost time and opportunities. Cause like, if I'd known that one stupid little thing, then maybe everything else would have turned out differently.
Yeah.
But I guess it's rewarding. It gives you something to do. I don't feel like I'm on a quest. I like sort of like what you said in a way is like, this is just sort of my nature. I just sort of do it. I don't consider it like, I don't know that there's an end game for me or end state where it's like, oh, I won, I finished, I'm complete. Even copy. If you know my
Here we
story,
go.
which
There's the
yeah,
segue. There's the segue.
yeah.
15 minutes in, we're gonna talk. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Copy Squad Light, join it now. So no, even copy was as an accident. This podcast, like you mentioned before we fired it up, you're like, hey, you've got some solid names, like real players in the industry on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
And it's all, I called it Mr. Magoo. Like I stupided my way into a lot of these opportunities. Like the way I met Joe, I'm not sure if you know that email that I sent and the story behind that.
I probably heard about it. Has your audience heard about it? I'm happy to sit here and listen if you want to tell it quick.
Yeah, I'll tell you really quick what it was. Is I heard the podcast he did with Kevin Rogers,
Yeah.
and he was offering copy camp. So I
Yeah.
sent him an email where I said, I've got the three qualities that you wanted on the show. Here they are. And he didn't answer me in 24 hours. And so I replied and I just said BUMP smiley face, colon parenthesis. But it was this arrogant expectation, like, hey, you said you wanted me to email you, and I emailed you. Give me a job. And it was because I was writing novels and I wanted to learn how to write copy so that I could sell my novels and then I could be like a passive income move to Costa Rica guy,
Yep.
digital nomad. And
How'd
so
that
like
work out? Well, you got
really,
the digital nomad part. You can do what you want from where you want, but it's just, I mean, and like, did you give up on the novels, or do you still have a novel in you? Does that come later?
I think it comes later. I definitely feel like I might even just go back to the ones now that I know stuff about. I like understanding that your reader matters. It's not just this thing where you get to
Yeah.
masturbatory, write for yourself that much.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even in novels, you have to think about what's interesting for the reader. And I look
That's a good
back
way to
at the
put it.
stuff I was doing. I was like, man, I could totally sharpen those. I could totally make them so much more. I could tease things. I could open loop things. I could do all sorts of stuff to keep you engaged in a novel now that I
Yeah.
didn't know existed back then.
No, that's a really good way to put it. The storytelling technique that you've built, right, the last 6, 8 years is gonna, when you come back to that and you want to pour energy into that again, that's gonna serve you really well. That's cool.
Yeah.
I was
So
screenplays. I was MFA from Hopkins, and I wrote 6, 8 screenplays, over the course of my 2 years in the MFA. And I was gonna move to LA and sell spec scripts and be a professional screener. I was gonna be, Charlie Kaufman. I was gonna be Michael Mann. I was gonna be like these movies that I loved and admired so much. That's what I was gonna do. And then you just find out that, like, whoops, that path isn't quite as available to you right now as you think it is. And then
mhm.
next thing you know, it's 17 years later and I've been in this industry that long. So yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean it's not there in the future. It doesn't mean it's not available to you at some other time. So
Yeah. So I
I
mean, same
remember
question back to you. Are you gonna
well, let me say one thing about that copy camp. You brought up that first copy camp, right? You were the first group.
two
Two
second
were,
group?
yeah, and that was the one down by power plant, right? Where we were
Yeah.
up in the second floor of that WeWork type place. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my lasting memory of you, not knowing you yet, when I first met you in that copy camp, was like, we would come in. You remember this? Like, the different guys would come in and we'd pitch like our franchises and our marquee guru and like what we're thinking about, like what's going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, Joe and Ron, there would be like an exercise or something that we'd participate in, and then we'd disappear for a couple of weeks, and then we'd come back, and then And I remember, like, the second time I came into that copy camp, like, I had kind of like set the baseline. Like, I had my, like, it's all very performative, right? Because for you young guys who didn't know anything about anything, it was like, how can we like most forcefully present the viewpoint of our franchise and our USPs and like what's important to us in this business. So I don't know if anybody else did that, but like I always had this very like kind of like over the top, like, you know, mushroom theory and all these other little stories and anecdotes and stuff that I
Oh
would
yeah.
drop on you guys. I remember you being the guy in the room as I look around as I'm talking. Like, I could tell that my shit wasn't working on you. There was something about your mentality where this was just like landing on you and like rolling right off. And I was like, I haven't captured this guy's imagination. I don't have his buy-in on the shit that I'm talking about. And if he's going to do anything for us, if he's going to work with me, there's going to have to be a different level of connection that takes place here. And I don't really remember how it came to be that, like, we did that project together and stuff, and it was nice and everything. But
Mm.
like, I don't remember what it was that led like from that to the step where that happened, because I just remember always having the sense that like what I was selling, you weren't buying. So that's my memory of meeting you in that copy camp all those years ago.
That's really interesting. I remember because you did the $1,000 check thing, right? Wasn't that your spiel?
Yeah, at the time, I think it was more than that. I think it was, 1,000 was the first copy camp. Yeah, because that's right. You're right. The first one was in the basement of an old building, and then we went downtown for the second one. It was like 2,500 or something like that. Yeah, that was me.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, for folks, the story goes, you were like, if you ring the bell, look, it's like I got to unpack everything. There was a bell that you would ring, like the Navy SEALs, if you quit copy camp, and you were offering a cash prize for anyone who would ring the bell
Yeah,
early. Just
yeah,
get the hell out of here. Don't waste our time. Here's
yeah.
$2,500. Be on your way. Man, that was pretty cool. Like looking back to like the glory days, the days when Agora was the supreme, like the top. And honestly, sitting in that room, I still didn't know, because the only experience I had of Agora was the Delray Beach office, which was a tiny little hole in the wall with like 6
Hmm.
chairs.
Hmm.
And I still didn't know what I had walked into. I still didn't know, like when you guys talked about USPs and the there. So I think about like all the people who would like have killed to be in my seat, and I had maybe what you were selling wasn't landing with me because I was so disconnected from the room that I was in. I didn't even know what I was doing there. I was like, when am I going to learn how to sell my novels? And so like I was so caught up probably in like what is going on that I
Yeah.
I could tell you also like the way that, I mean, because this is a result of our meeting. This comes from our work together, where the connection was made actually from Braddock. It was Braddock
That's
because
right. Yeah.
he had the idea. He had the headline in his head, Trump bonus checks. And he had never written a promo. He was just in copy camp, but I had been there about a month or two already and written a promo with Evaldo. So I had a promo under the belt. And so we ended up, you and I, in the same room because Braddock said, why don't you show me like what process you followed to get through your first promo? And so I went into the
That's
room
right.
and you were in the room. And if there was, I mean, there's a level of like autism plus confidence that I brought into the room, where I was like, all right, here's how I write promos and here's how I want to do it. And for whatever reason, again, having no idea who I
Can,
was sitting in front of.
can I ask you a question about that, actually? Because I know that, the work that we've done to get like, do you still use essentially the same models that you were aligned with years ago? Like with your team and stuff like that? Like, do you use variations of the same models that you were using then?
I would say no. I'd probably say it's so different now. Probably I call it the beats of a sales art, and it's not even close to what me and Braddock used.
Uh,
So I don't know. It's hard to say because I'm not sure exactly. I didn't really have a system back then. That was kind of one of the reasons why um, I invented the beats of a sales letters, because I felt like every time I sat down to write a promo, it was a blank. Like I have no idea what I'm doing, and it would keep me up at night.
you a second ago you said you had a question for me. I don't want you to lose it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it was about your presentation. I'll tell you something else, man. Like you're a scary dude in the copy camp. Like, because you had a nickname too. Like they kept introducing you as the Hitman. And
Yeah.
so we could kind of move into that. Like, how about that? Where did the nickname Hitman come from?
I had a really good run late. Talk about dating yourself, right, in the industry.
Mm.
I had a really good run like late 2008 through late 2009, and the Hitman was like writing hits. I wrote like a string of successful promos over like a 12-month period. And to be honest with you, I don't even remember who said it first or like where it came from. But
Mm.
like most nicknames, like somebody said it one time and like a couple people laughed, and then like 2 days later, like that's your nickname. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
that's how nickname. Thank God it wasn't something like dummy, whatever. Like I can't even think of anything stupid, but like, it could
Yeah.
have been that, and that sticks. And it's like, all these years later, it's like, no, but like, I leaned into that. Especially the copy camps and stuff too, because number one, it was a very active time in the business, and number two, we didn't have a lot of. I don't mean this in a bad way for the copy camper, like at the time, but like we didn't. What's the right way to say? We didn't have time to waste on people who weren't serious about the work. You know, we didn't have
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have time to waste on people who weren't going to be committed to like quality engagement, committed to good relationship, committed to like building really nice, really strong ideas that can move a franchise forward. So it was always easier for me to just be like a little bit of an asshole that way, because I'm like, the only people who are gonna like even try to look to overcome that and still engage with me are people who kind of check those boxes and they're serious
Mm-hmm.
about the work and they want to be here for the right reasons. I don't want people who are like back then, like this was, well before COVID and all that kind of stuff. Like we wanted people in the office and we wanted people engaged. We wanted people in meetings, like dealing with the editors on a daily basis, like embedded in the business. Like we didn't want people who like they wanted to do a quick year and then go become a digital nomad and whatever you said, go to Costa Rica or whatever. Like, I
Yeah.
get that. And
You
now
didn't
that's like a
want
reality.
me.
No. Now that's a reality. It's a real thing because it's part of the
Mhm.
world. It's part of life now, and like it's very accepted. But at the time, it was like we want people who they want to really jump in the business and they want to learn all the USPs. They want to learn the editors, and I was just like, so I can put this up and like this can be my persona that stands in front, like, because you get to talk to me, like we go out and we hang out, like I'm not like a purposely like that with people, but like when I was in those performative moments, I was like, let me push as many people away as possible because that'll get rid of the jokers.
Mhm.
So over the years, I just like leaned into that because it was an easy technique to use to make sure I wasn't wasting my time with people who weren't serious about
Mm. Mm. I wonder though, like, because I remember when like the screen would come down, because basically you were polarizing heavily, and I remember like early on, once I was through the veil or whatever, I was on the other side of the hitman shield. I was like, this guy's very nice. I remember I told you, I think at like an event or something, like one of those happy hour things. I was like, I could tell like you're really invested in your team. I could tell, and I thought I'd vocalize that to you.
it. Yeah.
One of the rare moments where I decided to speak up and say things like that to somebody. Yeah, I remember those days, and I remember that persona. And I was gonna ask, oh, yeah, that's one of those. Do you feel, because it's like it's a heavy, it's, I don't know. This is one of those kinds of questions where like who knows, but like, do you feel like there are people that you scared away who it wasn't the work ethic, but they weren't uh, confident enough to just go toe to toe with you specifically as an individual? Do you ever think that maybe that was a possibility?
Probably, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, there was probably talent, there was opportunities, there was probably all sorts of things that could have been a positive for us and for the business that slipped through my fingers because I was, I had, this goes back to what you were talking about a few minutes ago though too. Like you have a way, and you make adjustments and you want to get better and you want to, make improvements and stuff. But like for sure, in fact, if I sat here and thought about it for 10 minutes, I could probably come up with several people that I alienated or an opportunity that I missed because like the persona stood in front of like deeper consideration. So for sure, yeah.
One of those deep Kyle Milligan show takeaways. What do you think?
There's the takeaway. There's takeaway number one, 30 minutes in, right? Don't let your own bullshit get in the way of taking advantage of opportunity or seeing opportunity for what it may be, you know?
That's a deep one, because that's also tied to like ego, and that's something that I've been trying to. I've struggled. I don't want to say I struggle with it, but I have actively been monitoring and trying to crush it when it comes up as ego,
Yeah.
because most of my opportunities that have ever happened have happened because I was dumb and naive and I didn't know anything, let alone think I
Yeah.
know everything.
I don't know if it's ego, but well, it is. It's a manifestation of ego. It's probably part of the ego. I don't know all the technical terms. But the way I think about it sometimes is if you know you're wrong, say you're sorry. That's one way. It never gets in front of you that way. And if you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer. If you genuinely don't know, it's okay to say you don't know, but then always follow it up with, but I'll do what it takes to find out and I'll get back to you. Right.
Hmm.
Or like, I can't solve that for you right now, but I'm going to work on it and I'll get back to you. You know, like sometimes the ego, the chief, the problem solver, the has all the answers, knows the way forward, right? Like your team or the group of people that you're working with, like if you make a mistake, say you're sorry, and if you don't know the answer, be honest about it, but tell them that you're going to be there with them to help them figure out what it is. And that keeps that keeps the ego from like running away from you, and that's when you make big mistakes because you're chasing the checks that your ego wrote that you got to cash. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. So, with that being said, first off, congratulations. It's like a record to get to. I usually, the way these Dances with Wolves meetings usually go
Uh-huh.
is the first hour is usually like the run of the mill marketing bull. See, you don't have a spiel. Like you don't pitch your course or anything. So I don't have to break through for an hour your regular marketing
Yeah,
content.
yeah, no. It's just me. It's just
Yeah.
I am the course. I am the living embodiment of all my bullshit.
So we got straight to the good shit. So
We
we
got
got to know, how are you different now, man? How do you take all that lesson, like some of the stuff that you learn, and is there like a pivotal moment where you're like, okay, like some cool key lessons that if you could sum up how you are now compared to like that copy camp in 2018, what's the difference in the man?
that's a good question. I'm probably more patient. I'm not a patient person by nature, but I am probably more patient than I was then. Um, I'm more forgiving of disagreement. I'm probably a little bit more understanding of different viewpoints. I probably still open my mouth a little bit sooner than I should in some circumstances, but I think I've gotten better at maybe not like blowing people up unnecessarily, like when it isn't truly warranted. I guess I kind of had a habit of that in certain situations. Um, and I guess I've also become accepting of the fact that like you're going to have wins and you're going to have losses, and the wins don't necessarily mean that you're the greatest thing ever, and the losses don't necessarily reflect on your personal character. There was a time in the business, and it's just self-applied. I speak solely for myself. This came from no place else, where wins and losses were intensely personal for me, and my um, how do you want to say it? Your sense of self-worth sometimes get wrapped up in the scorecard, and that's good in a way. It can be good. It can be good. It can be healthy because it's motivating and it keeps you focused, right? It keeps you, running. But it can wear on you too. And it's not to say that I'm not, I don't take it as seriously as I did, because I'm very serious and I'm very passionate about the business and what we do and stuff. But it doesn't sit on my shoulders the way that it once did.
Right. And that I need to probably segue for the audience because your bio was shit. It was like one
Yeah.
line. And let them know. So Aaron actually
Well,
was the
once my
publisher.
once my course is live, I'll have a couple more paragraphs that I can add to the bio. But go ahead, if you
So
want.
yeah, so Aaron was the publisher at 7. He was it was around 2018, Agora split into imprints. Agora Financial was one company, and then all of a sudden there was a couple little smaller imprints within the organization. Aaron headed one of those. It's called Seven Figure Publishing. And that was where I worked with Braddock on the Trump bonus checks promo, and Aaron was the publisher. Aaron, as already mentioned, he had all this success as a copywriter formerly, which is going to lead me into my next question for you. But then he became a publisher where he had awesome group of people. He had Joe Schriefer in the building, and then so we had this great model and this great organization and all these talented people, and we wrote a bunch of successful promos together. Well, I don't say we wrote a bunch. I know that I worked on that one, and then I know Braddock and you guys wrote a bunch, and then Manny was in there, and so we all go back. Yeah, so Aaron basically ran an entire publishing company, and then he moved on from Agora, and we got to work together again, two different organizations basically, and write more promos together. And so over that time, I count you as one of my mentors, of like someone who taught me copy and taught me like one of the biggest lessons you ever gave me. You've said so many things like about your memories of me. This has entered so many conversations that I have with my juniors and new copywriters. Was this one line. You were like, we were going over an early draft of Trump bonus checks, and you said, all right, you said, I don't think I can even do an Aaron Gentzler voice, but it was like, look, this is it. This is all it is, okay? Trump did a thing. Now you get paid. That's it. Trump did a thing. Now you get paid. And I took that, and it's become like sort of the foundation and basis for everything else, because, it's sort of like the idea of the one belief that we're all taught. But while we were going over the promo, you said that line like several times, and that sort of,
if you say so, but I'll be honest with you, that's the other thing too. There was so much copy. There's so much, the pace of the business at that time. I have no recollection of that or that meeting. But if finding I guess the point is finding the thread, right? Finding the essential element, finding the through line of the piece that's going to be the touchstone for the reader as you build that impression as to what's possible, right? If that's what you got from that, and you can communicate to writers like using that, I'm really happy. I'm happy that, if again, like I said, I was there. I'm not saying you're making it up. I'm sure I was in the room, but I have no recollection of saying that.
yeah, it was just
But if that's what you took forward and you use with writers today, that's great, because that's a useful technique. I mean, you see it all the time. Like this is kind of important that so much copy, like it's so easy to lose focus, and it's so easy for copy to go sideways so quickly that in the span of a half a page, you can completely lose attention. You can completely lose my buy-in on the idea that you're the thread that you're building. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing. Reading stuff that you've done, and Manny, and it's very the copy that you guys produce is very sharp, and I know that as an organization you pay very close attention to that. It's just so important, because I've already given you a click. I've given you a few seconds of my time to allow you to grab me by the lapels, pull me in, capture my attention. And then I'm with you for 15 minutes. I'm on page 22, and you violate that by some sloppy, lazy, So, I mean, that's for the junior up and coming copywriters in your group who, may be watching this. Like your copy has to remain intensely focused at all times. And it has that sharpness. The sharpness is what's going to ultimately make people pay attention and bring them all the way through. And if you don't have that, people are looking for off ramps. They're looking for exit points constantly, right? Give me an excuse. Give me half a reason. Give me any kind of reason to disengage, to get out of here, right? Just, you can't ever give them one.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything that would just echo or cheapen your message, but that's basically it. Like they don't want to be there. And the only reason they're there is because you are doing such an intensely good job of keeping them there actively.
Yeah.
So, and that manifests in a copywriter in so many, many different ways, where, I mean, if they don't say what's in it for me in the first 4 to 6 lines is a big rule for me. And it's like, they say, well, but they're interested in this story. It's a topic they should be interested in. And I'm like, you don't get that luxury. You don't get that grace that you can assume that, oh, they're just going to be interested in this tangentially enough if you don't relate it directly to them. Like they'll just be interested in this idea or this topic where you have to at some point involve them, and you have to, and it has to be a very early involvement in some way. Otherwise, what it is an editorial piece. It's information, and it's nothing engaging. And the other thing is, like, whatever it is, you need to make them lean in. So I see pattern interrupts that are, I've written janky pattern interrupts in my day, but
for sure.
I've seen some cliche ones too, where someone's burning something, or I'm so tired of things getting burnt at the start of a sales letter. But man, with the one of the things that you were just talking, okay, this is something else that's important. So it just goes to show too, like with the line, Trump did a thing, now you get paid. It was probably super common to you. And it was probably like a lesson that, you would take for granted as just like normal, like obvious. But the level that I was at in terms of understanding how copy function, because I struggled a lot, like trying to get my head around copy to begin with. Like to me, that was like like this idea that if it doesn't support this thesis, Trump did a thing, now you get paid. Delete it. And we ended up deleting a lot of copy after that line got uttered.
I'm sure you got that. Those types of, again, if in fact this conversation actually took place, which I don't know if you're just being polite by saying that it did, but the cool part that you had at that time too was you were popping around, as I remember, and you were working with a variety of different groups inside the business. So like you were basically like a bouncer, right? Like you were moving around. So you got all these different perspectives, like my greatest hits type stuff that I picked up from, like my mentors from 10, 12 years even before that. And then you got to go work with XYZ, and you were picking up stuff from them, and now you get to be, now you get to pass that along to, everyone in your group and everyone who follows your content. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
when was that?
When was which?
What the record on the wall was that 18?
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah.
The copycam was February 2018 through March.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so coming back
where'd you were in Florida at the time when you came to Baltimore for the camp, or did you come from somewhere else?
Yeah, I started in the Delray Beach office on October 2nd, 2017 was my first day in Delray.
That's right. Yeah. You had been there, but yep. And then you were around. There were a couple of you, right, that were around for a couple months before the camp started in February or whatever.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But because I was in Delray, there wasn't any of us in Delray that were around.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, with the one thing that you said earlier, I made a little note that I wanted to ask you about, because you were formerly a copywriter, and as I mentioned, then you were a publisher. I'm not sure your exact title now, because I feel like got your hand in a couple cookie jars. Maybe I'm not exactly sure what your formal title is.
Copy chief, I guess CMO. I guess
All right.
Couple different jars. Cookie jar. It's a cookie jar.
Yeah. So,
okay, so let's go. I'm curious what this question might be. Go for it.
Yeah, the question is, because these are evolutions, right? Did you feel like you had to lay down or let go of some of your past success, like your almost like identity, to move on to like a new thing?
From as changes in the business over time became clear, or like you mean from like a quote unquote like job title perspective?
it's kind of a job title, but like you were the hitman as a copywriter, and then at one day you're a publisher, and so you're operating in the business, but you're not like in that driver's seat anymore. Now you're like a leader, and you have to be more of like a strategist, and you can't just exclusively just crank out promo after promo after promo.
It was
And
incredibly hard. It was incredibly hard. It was a big struggle. That led to some of the things that I talked about a few minutes ago, like ta- taking things probably overly personal. Like you take on a what's the right way to say it? I don't know. This is tough. This is a really interesting question that I honestly I have not spent much time sitting around thinking about the answer to what you just asked. So that makes it a good question by definition, right? Um, yeah, tactically, I know I made a lot of mistakes. Strategically, I know I made a lot of good things too. There were good times, but like, yeah, no, it was tough because it was like with an idea, with a piece of copy, it's like it's clean. You either know if it's cooking or it's not. You know if it's going to sing or it's not. You don't know if it's going to convert necessarily. You got traffic, you got the situation in which it's released, all these things that you don't have so much control on. But the words on the page, the structure of the argument, the music of the copy, like you have a measure of control. You have total control there. If you're good with the editor, you're clean on the idea. You put the right words there. You have a chance at conversion. You always have that level of control. And then you go to a different scenario where so much more is outside of your complete control. And that's a huge, and I'm not trying, anyone who has that opportunity, I encourage you to take advantage of it. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from jumping like that, but yeah, no, it's a big learning curve, and it was a difficult thing. I'm
yeah,
glad I did.
so
I'm glad I don't regret it. I don't regret any of those decisions at all. I'm glad. I feel like I did them for the right reasons. I did them, with good intentions, and I gave it, at all steps, I gave it everything that I had.
mhm,
But yeah, no, I would not deny the steepness of that learning curve because it
mhm,
was, in my case, it was pretty severe.
mhm. So while you're going through the trials of this learning curve, you can you give us, I don't know if I'm repeating the exact same question or if I'm not, but like the idea of laying down the title of copywriter and then having to adopt the beginner's mind. Like,
Yeah.
what's it like knowing that you're like, okay, I have a hold of this. Like you said, I have control over this craft and I have certainty within it. Like whenever I start doing things, I sort of know if things are heading the right direction, the wrong direction. What I'm
Sure.
going to do now is I'm just going to say, okay, all that past success and all that. And then also you can't defend it any longer is another thing. It's like having a title, having like a belt that you're no longer fighting for, but you're carrying the belt, but you can't defend the title anymore. So
Hmm.
it's like laying down your belt in a way and
Hmm.
picking up nothing, picking up dust, dirt because you don't know shit in the new the new wrestling ring or whatever you're stepping into.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Exhilarating. I remember it was a lot of fun because it was going to be a big challenge. There were resources and people throughout the business that were there to help, and that was cool because I got to you got to learn so much more. Like, I'm not, I don't want to get hung up in like the tripping up the ladder of the learning curve because there was a lot that was really positive and cool and fun about it too. And then but it's just trying to think of an example of something like big picture that would make sense, like organizational buy-in, right? I knew about editorial. I had worked with editorial. I started out writing special reports and things like this, right? So I was familiar with and obviously I'd been in the business long enough that I know how editorial and the different silos and functions of the business all work together. But how do I present a cohesive editorial vision to an editorial team, get their buy-in, and then get them to come into work every day energized to drag us forward on whatever the big themes and ideas are that we want to present right now, having never done that. Okay, well, we need to formulate an editorial vision that's going to make sense for all these people, that's going to speak to the skill sets that we have existing, and it's going to put our editors in the best position to continue to succeed and build big ideas. And we need to have that up and running by Thursday. Ready, go. Right. So like that was a challenge. And it was like, and then it was like, well, there's operational buy-in. There's a copy team, right? And that's where the Hitman stuff was, to the extent that it was useful, who's to say, right? That's where that was useful, because I could always go to that. You know what I mean? That persona was always there, available to me, where I could just be like, you guys get your shit together, like, that was always there, but like that doesn't work with an editorial team, because they don't play by the, they're not the same mindset as a copy team. And so navigating all that and learning, motivation and getting buy-in, and then being there to support people too, because you take on the responsibility of these people that want to raise their hand, and they're like, I want to go over here with this person. I want to go over here with this person. Well, these are my interests. I want to go over here and work in this part of the business, right? You're responsible for those people's success. Like, yeah, they're responsible for their own success, doing the work on a daily basis, but you have a responsibility to put those people in a position to be successful, and then do it repeatedly, do it over and over again, and handling that and making sure that you're being true to that. Like I mean, I keep coming back to learning curve. I keep saying learning curve, but like that was the responsibility of the whole thing. So yeah, it was fun. It was one of the most fun things ever. It was like, I had a blast doing it, but it was stressful, and it took a lot out of me at the same time.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, like, as an aside, like, for all the stones that people love to throw at Agora, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I have from my experience there was the I guess it was sheer luck that at that time, especially, it was just all these talented people who were all very supportive and very helpful, were always like, I don't know that you, in a single lifetime, you'll get in a room like that again, where it'll have that caliber of people all hanging out, all having the exact same, like, the energy. Like, that was the reason why I gave up, and the reason I keep asking you about, like, giving up an identity, because my whole life mission I had to abandon if I was going to buy into this copywriting thing full time, as opposed to just using the information to sell novels. And I had to make a transition, and then I had to become a copy chief. And believe it or not, I wrote way less as a copy chief. I edited an ass load. I rewrote an ass load, but I wrote original, like, pieces so few and far. And now, as an agency owner, I am sort of now in a box of, I have to scale myself and get them to write more and get them to do and teach themselves how to edit. And like, it becomes now I'm just a teacher and a coach, and I still edit a lot. So I've had to go through these evolutions, and it's like, I've got this record right here, which points to my worth in this industry, but I don't even do this anymore. Like, we wrote that fucking promo in like 2 weeks together. We stayed in the basement till 10 p.m. I don't do that anymore. It's not my life anymore. So it's like, this record, it's credibility for a person that I am not even embodying today anymore, right? Do you see what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but does that bother you?
I don't know yet. That's the thing. Like, you have to sort of be comfortable, like, letting it go and saying, okay, I'm not a
Oh yeah,
full-time copywriter anymore. Now
yeah.
this is
Well,
my new role and who I gotta be.
yeah. No, you're gonna, like, there's like seen and unseen evolutions that are taking place simultaneously throughout our careers, like all around us, right? Ones that we're consciously, not to get like completely off the reservation, but like
Oh, that's what
there's
this show is all about, baby. All off the reservation.
there's choices that we make that lead us to an evolution that we consciously enter into, and then there's evolutions that take place around us that lead us someplace new that we're not consciously participating in. They both can be equally useful. So what I think, if I may, if I may, what I think you're talking about is you had an identity that was wrapped up in a certain kind of work, a certain process, a certain, mentality that has evolved, but you're not, not to be cute, put too fine a point on it, but you're not doing what you're doing right now if you're not 3 evolutions ago doing what you did that put you on that path in the first place, right? And
Mm-hmm.
all the way back to like trying to taking your AirPods out at the gym and like trying to get chatty and like trying to like connect and get better at networking and things like that. That leads to an evolution like this show and like what you're doing, and it's going to be messy and it's going to suck sometimes and it's going to be imperfect and you're going to make mistakes, but you're not going to be positively exposed to luck and opportunity in the long term if you pull away from evolution's conscious and unconscious. Keep leaning into the process of evolution and letting that take you where it's going to take you, and you're going to continue to progress. So for me, going from copywriter to publisher, or like try to build a franchise, or like do this or do that. Like, yeah, I was scared, and like, I was really scared sometimes. But I was like, you know what? Like, I can always write copy. You can devolve very quickly and easily. A lot of people do, right? Oh shit, whoa, that's one rung too high. I better go back down and get better at that before I try that again. You know what I mean? Happens to people every day. There's nothing wrong with that, But I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this down. I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna give it everything I have to give it, and see where it goes, and see what happens next. Because I can always. I mean, I'm probably not quite the copywriter I probably was some number of years ago. You got to get out of practice, but it's a muscle, right? Like you talk about that
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Like you got to work that muscle, and if I had to, I could work that muscle back into a position where I was like, okay, I can do this again, and I feel confident about doing this. So you can always do that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's the evolution's conscious and unconscious. That's takeaway number 2. I got 2 really nice takeaways in here. We're not even at the 60-minute mark. I'm pretty pleased so far. How about you?
This is what I live for. This is what I live for. This is just life lessons and mentorship. I might have to get a second brewski in a minute here, but I like the devolve thing. It's really easy to devolve. That's like a thing that I've had nights. I mean, I had it when I was a copy chief. And then definitely when I decided to do my own thing and there's no safety net, there's no bottom
Yep.
for me. There's nowhere I can't fall and
Scary.
like,
Yep.
oh, this is where you
Yep.
stop.
Yep.
It's like, why don't I? And oh my God. So I had an offer on the table from Mike Palmer and MarketWise to go do some copy chiefing over there. And I made the choice instead of like going that way to go on my own and take that chance. David, I talked to David. I called like all the people who I thought were smarter than me, and I was asking for like advice. I remember David Deutsch was like, dude, you could just go work with Mike Palmer and like just give it 2 years, and then if not, you can go start your own thing. And I was like, yeah, but I just couldn't for whatever reason. I was like, I want to try my own thing. And so I always look back to that conversation specifically when he was like, why don't you just take the job, do it for as long as if you hate it, quit. And then you can always start your own thing. And for whatever reason, my mentality was the opposite. Well, it's like, no, because I've always wanted to start my own thing and I've always taken the job. And it's like, what if I die and I never started my own thing? So I always look back to that conversation when I'm having a rough time. And this voice will creep up and be like, why don't you just take the fucking job? Why don't you'd probably be making way more money. All you would worry about is writing a promo and submitting it. You wouldn't have any of this other bullshit on your mind. Like
Yeah.
those are the weird creeping voices. And that's the battle, is that voice. It's almost not even what's happening in around trying to grow an agency and an info pub and all this other bullshit. It's like all the shit that's happening more in here than the spreadsheets and the finances and the operations.
Yeah. It's a hell of a thing, ain't it? That little voice.
Did you ever
Oh,
did
for
you go
sure.
toe to toe and say, all right, this is how I'm going to deal with that? And what, hey, if you actually have a bit lengthy of a story, I'm going to do a quick refill. So how did you ever go like toe to toe and say, I have to get this under control?
Yeah. How long is it going to take you? How long do I got? How long do I have? Where's the refrigerator?
Let's say 60 seconds. Give me a full minute.
All right.
All right.
So I'm gonna talk about the little voice while you're gone.
Especially, I want to know, like, because I've thought of like those serious, because it's not just the business. It's like in my when I become aware of it in one area of my life, then I start to recognize that, oh, it also impacts me. That it's also there. It's also when I go do this, and it's also when I go do that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, so what do I do? How do I squash it or replace it or overpower it or out volume it with something better or different? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Go. I think the voice that you're talking about is an instinct of self-preservation. It's, what if I make the wrong decision? What are the consequences of that decision? How could I be negatively impacted if it's the wrong decision? How do I make my way back? How do I, right, all the way down to like, how do I continue to pay the bills if it's the wrong decision? What if I lose friendships over it? Well, all these different things. But in your case, Kyle, do you take the job for a year, 2 years, see if you like it? Or do you want to start your own thing, do your own thing? You said several times when you were telling that story that you had always wanted to do your own thing. It was always in your head. And starting something of your own that you said, you even went so far as to say, what happens if I die? What happens if some terrible accident or whatever, you die and you never took advantage of the opportunity to start your own thing and have complete ownership of your own thing, right? In that moment, right, when you were faced with that decision, the impulse to have ownership and to do your own thing and be your own man that way, right? And not have a spreadsheet hanging over top of your efforts and being responsible for yourself, overpowered and outweighed that voice in your head, that instinct for self-preservation that said, don't take the risk, don't take the jump, right? It seems like that worked out pretty well for you, right? There are other times you leave again. So now I got to do another 60 seconds, it looks like. There are other times where it's basically, it's risk analysis, right? It's like you game the scenario in your head, right? And if the little compass in your head is strong, there's the don't take the risk, don't take the jump. There's self-preservation on one side, and then there's your personal integrity, your passion, your deep-seated wants, and like what you see yourself as in the future, your aspirations, right? Those two things bump up against each other. You got to trust that compass. And so, it's like a gut feeling, right? It's a visceral thing, right? That's why it's called a gut feeling, because you feel it in your gut, right? My gut just doesn't like it, right? Your gut in that instance was like, no, this is it. This is my chance. This is what's right for me. I'm going to do this. And like you did it, and it worked out. You know what I mean? So I'm sure you probably still talk to Mike, right? You and Mike are probably still on, you're on good terms, right? So let's say
Oh
this
yeah,
whole
we're on
thing
good
goes,
terms.
yeah, this whole thing goes sideways, right? Bad problems, whatever, like, crumble. Oh no. Like you didn't shut the door on that opportunity either, because you probably did it the right way. You had a polite conversation with him and you said, no, my gut tells me, my passion tells me right now, I want to go over here. I want to do this. I want to build something of my own. I want to take a chance at this. Right. So like, it's just like, don't burn bridges, don't close doors, right? Trust your gut, follow your instincts. Sometimes your aspiration wins and sometimes self-preservation wins. Trust that compass. That's what I'd say to that question. Let's 5 minutes later, I give you a third one.
Okay. Trust the
Yeah, hey,
compass.
no. I'm not talking specifically about your situation. I've been in a ton of situations like that too. And I can think of instances where I was like, I look back and I'm like, yep, good job, right choice. You played it right. You took the cards that you had, you made the right choice. And then I look at other ones and I'm like, man, if I go this way instead of this way, how might that, I mean, we all have those. That's another key point, if I can, if I may. Don't dwell on that shit. When you get on the other side of them, charge. You know what I mean? Keep on trucking. Go. Don't sit around and second guess yourself. You make a decision, follow through, and give everything you got. You'll be better off for it in the long run.
And within that last statement, don't second guess yourself. That's the one that sort of addresses the voice specifically or directly, is the second guessing of yourself. Second guessing of like, whoa, like when you're having a late night or a bad night or something, and it's like, or it's you're just doing work that the shit part, and there's always some shit part of a job where you're like, I
Yeah.
hate this part, and you're doing it and
Yeah.
doing it and doing it.
Well, happiness is like the divisor, you know? Like, are you happy? You know, yeah, there's shitty jobs, there's shitty days, you know.
Mm.
But on par overall, are you happy? Would you consider yourself happy?
I feel like I am ever increasingly moving towards that. But, because ultimately, that's a big question, Aaron. Are you happy? Like, it's kind of part of the reason why I started all this bullshit is because I felt isolated, and I felt like I looked around, I looked left and I looked right, and I had this blueprint for like I did everything right. I made a fuck ton of money. I had all this credibility. I was known in my industry. I had success. I was this on paper. Everything is absolutely where it needs to be. And I was like, but my relationships, depth of connections, even breadth and width of connections. Like how many people can I call up? It's now that I've tapped into that a little bit deeper and put more. I'm actually I realize I had a lot more friendships and relationships than I knew, and I
Mm.
felt for whatever reason, and this is something that me and Rich talked about on that last podcast, was that I felt like for whatever reason I didn't bring enough to the table to lean on those connections, or for whatever reason I wasn't on their level to just reach out or say, "Hey, how's it going?" or "Hey, what's up?" Because also everyone I know is like basically like a gajillionaire and
Yeah.
successful.
Why? Why? Who cares though?
Mm,
Money's one way to keep score, right? Success and acclaim and industry, right? But
mm,
like, let me put it to you this way: how many of the people that you look at in the industry or otherwise, right, that are gajillionaires, to use your word, how many of them are remarkably younger than you are?
I don't think any of them are like younger than me.
Right. So who fucking cares? You're on the right track, and someday you can be a gajillionaire too. To
Mm,
some, it's a matter of perspective, right? To
hmm
some, hi, you're probably out there. Maybe, hopefully, you're watching this. To some 22-year-old who's thinking about the industry, thinking about getting in touch with you, right? You're probably of an unreachable, unattainable acclaim, and you know what I'm
hmm
saying. Like, so it's all relative. Don't beat yourself up over that. So yeah, like money and acclaim and industry credentials and connections, and these are ways that we keep score, right?
hmm
These are ways that we tally who's doing the most with what they got right now, and who's having the best time of it right now. But in the
hmm
grand examination, none of that stuff's going to make you truly happy. So you need to find what it is for you that's going to do that. In my opinion.
Yeah. What I love about this too is like as you're giving me amazing
Yeah, I don't know
feedback,
what.
advice, and
This is
mentorship.
weird. This is a weird conversation. How did we get into this? Like we're in the deep water right now.
Because you're
What?
talking to me, man. Because you're
Yeah,
talking to
I
me.
don't know.
This is what I do. I
Yeah.
bring this shit out of people. You see what I'm saying? My
Remind me
minute.
to yeah. Remind me to never get in the car and start watching YouTube videos. Somebody's gonna start crying.
So, do you consider yourself a seeker? Because you did you mentioned earlier you call me a seeker, right? Like someone who's like on this quest, like because you could have probably comfortably just kept cruising in the copy space for eternity, just racking up royalties, but you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess by the definition that I gave you, the way I explained it to you, yeah, I would probably put myself in the same category. Um, and there's a lot of commonality there too with what you said about that voice that was like, do it, you might not get another chance, but then like the other little, the angel and the devil on each shoulder, and like one's like, take advantage of opportunity, and the other one's like, no, it's too scary, all the time. It happens to me all the time. And I'm just like, you just gotta like, what did I call it a minute ago? Like the compass or the gut, you
Mhm.
just gotta
Yeah.
like put it, you just like in your head, you just gotta like build well, this is the list on this side, this is the list on that side. Where am I at? What do I want right now? What am I ready for? and then just make a decision and just roll.
It's dope. It's dope.
No,
And
but
yeah,
yeah,
like
no. The seeker, like, what comes next? What's the next evolution? How can I make this bigger, or how can I go here instead? For sure, all the time. And I think that's good though. That's healthy. That means like it means you're not bored. It means you're engaged. It means you care. Like, it's demonstrating your passion. Like, if you have that, like, that seeker mentality, like, it keeps you. It's the juice. It's what keeps you
mm-hmm,
moving.
mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So
I recognize that there's a possibility that this sounds like bullshit, but you're asking me straight questions, and I'm doing my best to give you straight answers. So, in my perspective, this is what it is for me
and
in the context of this conversation.
And I think too, with like, well, I don't think it's bullshit. So I think too, what's really important is that because a lot of copy is getting younger, man. Like, people are finding it and reaching out to me. Like, I connected a guy with John Benson recently. He was 16. I didn't know this kid was 16 years old. I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize you were 16. And I was like, it's like these people, they're because the internet exists and they're trying to find money, and it's like what it was like a couple years ago when someone said, oh, college isn't worth it. When someone said that, whatever, 6-7 years ago, it's like that on steroids, and now everyone's trying to get rich by the time they turn 18 and retire and travel the world. So I've got, you're telling me this shit, I'm 34. If I could have heard this shit at 16 years old, 17, good God, like, what a fucking difference maker it would have been to have this sort of information. Or though maybe it would have went right over my head because I wouldn't have the experience to categorize it. But like, this is the kind of shit, like, this is the shit that I'd like to have heard from day one, day zero. Okay. But going into, I don't know, lighter subjects, maybe, I think so, at least more logistical. As a seeker, looking at what's ahead, I'm sure you get this question all the fucking time. What's going on with our industry, man?
I think by and large, I think USPs are getting better, stronger. I think offers are more appropriate for the market and where the market's at right now. It's been a very difficult. 22 was a disaster, right? A lot of cash on the sidelines, a lot of people shaking out. Inflation is finally moderating. Looks like markets are, S&P's 20-some% off the lows, which it hit in October, November. There's a possibility that the light at the end of the tunnel could be some sunshine and not an oncoming train, which says a lot for appetite. But on the other side of that, like, USPs and offers are going to have to be stronger than ever. So yeah, no, in the conversation that I had with John Knutson a couple of weeks ago, I talked about this at length. I'm aggressively bullish on what's possible in the industry. I'm aggressively bearish on laziness and bad practice and bad behavior, which, again, we don't need to get into here because I spent a lot of time talking with John about that the other week. And that's like, I talked about things like passion, like what you said about, like, the mentality of, like, the 16-year-old who doesn't want to go to college. They want to be a digital nomad and they want to make as much money as possible, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to do that via copy. I don't want to work with those people. I don't want to be associated with those people. I don't want them anywhere near our business because they're bad for everybody. They should leave.
Because of the selfish attitude of it, the selfish nature, or the non-respect for the craft, which
everything, the craft, the business, the customer, the experience, the relationship, the deleterious effect that it has on reader trust over time. Like, bad practice needs to be rooted out, and it needs to be taken away from the business, from the industry as much as we can. I'm a big believer.
Well, I guess if everybody played by, if that was the whole playing field and it was level in that way, because what happens is, let's say you get somehow miraculously 80% of people all get on the same page, and there's nothing aggressive going out, and everything's like, you're going to have a 20%er group that's going to come in, they're going to push the envelope. They're going to make a gajillion dollars. And then you're going to see everyone start saying, well, I want to get that gajillion dollars too.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't say that. I didn't say not aggressive. I said irresponsible. I'm pretty sure irresponsible is the word that I used. So aggressiveness has its place because ultimately this is interruption-based marketing, right? We have to shake people to attention. We have to take them out of their daily routine. We have to capture their attention, and then we have to hold it. So aggressiveness can play a part in that. It's irresponsible. That we need to be aware of, and we need to be, we need to look out for. But like I said, like industry-wide, the trends, and there's people that you've talked to in recent episodes who are far more qualified than me to talk about this kind of stuff. But industry-wide, I'm very bullish on the possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's dictated by the market. It's dictated by appetite and sentiment, and what people mentally, what they're open to, and what they think is opportunity right now. So as more sectors and asset classes continue to recover and do well, that's going to open up more opportunity for everybody.
Yeah.
It was that way, coming out of 2008, 2009 as things got better, crypto wave 1 to crypto wave 2, so and the responsive marketer is paying attention to those sorts of things, those factors, those wins in the markets, and they're one step ahead of it because the lion's share of the benefit goes to the people who get there earliest, right? So who's doing the work right now to find the emerging trends that are going to be part of the next wave and then be first to market with those ideas? Those are the people that are going to do the best. Like you don't want to be back in the day, right? Everybody, you made the money on you're the first person to market with really clean, coherent, actionable advice on cannabis. Did very well. The 9th USP on cannabis gets a heck of a lot less. So what's coming next? Who's going to do the work? Figure out what's coming next, and then get those USPs in place to take advantage of it when it's time.
That's huge because it totally dovetails with what Rich was talking about in our last thing. He basically said, we talked about some of his, career highlights, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said it comes down to being first. It comes down to having having the foresight to know what's coming and then getting in front of it. I think though, man, in our industry, this is something that is frustrating for editors and copywriters. And you see folks like, who's a good example? I mean, I don't know, maybe Ray Dalio had trouble with this, George Gilder, but like people who do see things coming down the pipe and the market just isn't ready. Like you're almost like too early, and like they don't pay attention, they don't listen, they ignore it. And then you write, how do you reconcile like I feel like our audience wants to get on the hot thing that they're already too late to get in on, but that's what they're going to subscribe to. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's a really nuanced question. There's a couple different ways to look at that. Like you always want to be testing stuff that's early. You want to find what's next, right? Because if you hit those are going to be there's the potential to be transformational for your business and for your readers, right? You're going to miss on a lot of those too, right? Just because, like what you said, it's too hard, it's too early, the awareness isn't there, right? But then you need to supplement those swings that you're taking, looking for the next big trend, the next big thing. You need to supplement that smartly, intelligently, and with USPs and fulfillment sets that benefit your readership. Well, you need to jump right into the tide of mass desire. Where's the conversation right now? Where's everybody at? Like, where's the action at? Well, we need that too, right? So that's the give and take, like we're looking at what's coming next, and those are some ideas that we're working on. But we're also, here's where we want to, let's do the Wayne Gretzky thing. Like you don't want to escape to where the puck's going to be, not where it's at right now, right? But like you got to spend, like somebody's got to be at the fucking puck right now, right? Somebody's got to be on the puck, right? And then somebody else, like hopefully your business is robust enough that like you can be in multiple places, right? You can be operating in different modes, getting ready. So you got some people over there, they're going to go where the puck's going to be, but then you got to be on the puck as well, because let's say you score, like you can't just leave it sit out there. Does that make sense? Does that analogy, does my tortured Wayne Gretzky where the puck's going to be analogy answer your question? Does that help?
For the layman's at home, what he's saying is do both. Get way ahead of what the trends and take swings, but you have to have something to fall back on, something current, something that's top of mind. You said the pool of mass desire. What was that phrase you used?
Tide of mass desire. Like, what are people paying? What's in the news? What's trending? What are people paying attention to? What's the zeitgeist? What's the energy right now? Right? Like, I'll give you some examples right now. AI, right? AI is a big thing, right? Anything Elon Musk, right? Like, the Apple AR headgear. Is that poised for, right? A couple years ago, it was anything crypto related. You put crypto around any kind of an idea, it made a lot of sense because that's what people were talking about. It's like the cab driver bartender indicator. I know you know all this stuff. I'm not saying this for your benefit, but like getting an Uber. What's your Uber driver talking about? Right? Go out with friends, sit at a bar. What's the bartender talking about? What's the conversation on the street? Right? That's like that zeitgeist is like that's what's those are the thought worms that are in people's psyche right now. And like, what are the headlines? What's driving the news shows? What's on social media? That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ideas that are motivating people to action right now.
Mm. Well, that actually does drive me to a question that I had because you mentioned AI and you mentioned AR. And so where you're at now, I feel like has a bit of a conservative audience. And I'm not sure how heavy it is in the tech space. I mean, do you guys focus on, do you have tech letters over there, like specifically for like advanced, like futuristic tech stuff?
We've touched it. Yeah. There's fulfillment around AI specifically. Yeah. There's a solution set for that. Sure.
Right. So like for folks who are, you know, they're not trying to get to the cutting edge of AI right now. Or like honestly, a lot of my friends hardly know AI exists. It's like it's in our face as marketers because we are like on the cutting edge. We're looking ahead. And so like I talk to my friends and they're just like they're like still like getting chat GPT to call each other gay or something. Like
Yeah.
they don't even know what the possibilities or even understand or care what it can do. And like
Yeah.
we're losing our minds. Every event I go to is how AI is going to take our jobs. Where does the other stuff though fall? Like the for instance like crypto. And if you're not talking about AI and tech, like does that stuff still resonate and still work? Is there still a space for that?
I can't I can't quite remember where I read it or if someone said it to me recently, but like we're still in the prologue of AI. We're not even in the top of the first inning yet. And they just, well, who was it? It was an editorial call or something. I'm sorry, I can't source who said this, but like, and just to use the examples that you would hear all the time, like the actual invention of the personal computer up against it's in more than 50% of households. Cell phones, broadband internet, right? All these different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Adoption cycles take quite some time. So ChatGPT bursts onto the scene and it's like, if you're a marketer, you have to have these 3 prompts because they're the ChatGPT breakthroughs that are going to lead to, they're going to completely eliminate junior writers and all your offers are going to be auto generated and all you have to do is right. That's probably going to happen. That's probably possible, but it's so much further out on the curve than anything that we've actually seen that's right. There's like the example of the lawyers in New York that used ChatGPT to come up with the filings for some case, and then they found like those lawyers got censured because it was revealed that ChatGPT didn't use real case law. It just like threw a bunch of ideas together, and it was like, and they didn't check it, and they submitted this filing. Right, this was on Drudge or whatever, like a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that vulnerability to AI right now, and like I think a lot of the big picture, and this is just my opinion, right? But a lot of the stuff that we're hearing is probably going to happen. It's going to take the bottom end. It's going to take the junior level out of a lot of industries. But no one who's in that level in any business right now that could be affected by AI has to worry about it because by the time it actually happens, they won't be lower level anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
That's a good way to put it.
if I'm I was I did an interview a couple of weeks ago, and somebody asked me about, like, well, what about for copy specifically, right? Like your 16-year-old contact out there that you mentioned earlier, right?
Mm.
They'll probably be fine too, because as the first inning goes to the second inning, goes to the third inning, they'll be progressing along with the power of these AI tools that are going to become available to us. What I wouldn't want to be right now, this is what I said in that interview, was I wouldn't want to be 3, 4, 5 years out from deciding that I want to give this industry a chance. Because when the acceleration begins, the changes are going to take place very rapidly. The people who are already embedded in the business are going to benefit from those changes as that first wave begins to take place. And it's going to make the entry that much more difficult for a lot of people. That's an assumption on my part, but I could see that happening. So if I'm 5 years away from deciding that I want to give this industry a chance, it could be radically, radically different 5 years from now than what it is right now. But anyone who's in the business right now is going to just evolve with it as it begins to take off. That's my opinion.
I like that. That's a hot take. I feel like that's a way of looking at it where it's not so black and white of like just this dooming. It's comical. It feels just like so hyperbolic. Every slideshow starts with like a Terminator
Well,
face.
and like, let me give you another example.
Right.
Tesla driverless, right? The
Mhm.
driverless over the road trucking, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
What is it? 38. I'm going to get the numbers wrong. I apologize. Fact check me, right? 38 out of the 50 states,
Mm.
truck driver is the number one job for men.
Mm.
Okay. 38 of the 50 states, the number one most held job in that state is truck driver. A couple years ago, full autonomous Tesla, driverless technology comes out. All the trucks are going to go driverless. All over the road shipping and trucking and everything is going to be completely human free.
Mhm.
38 out of the 50 states, the number one job in that state is going to be decimated in our lifetimes, right? And we're going to have millions of unemployed men who are going to be completely cast out because what they've done their entire career just isn't going to exist anymore.
Mhm.
Still waiting for that. And yeah, that might happen, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. And I would venture, I don't know, I hope that nobody who's driving a truck who's mid-career right now who delivers stuff over the road is going to be out of a job because of driverless technology, because when that actually comes online and it starts like taking over, right, those people are going to pivot into different places in the industry where they can be equally or even more valuable, right?
Mhm.
So it's not an elimination, I think, that we're facing. It's an addition, right?
Mm. Mhm.
And I don't think AI is any different.
Yeah. And what's funny is the first promo I ever wrote in 2017 was about autonomous vehicles, and that was 2017. And I I was stoked. I was like, this technology is real and people they're doing it. Like I had to research all the different testing facilities. Like Arizona was a state that was like going gung ho. Uh, Pittsburgh was a city that was going like they were going to have like a whole area or something that would be autonomous vehicle only, or would be open to autonomous vehicles. So I was learning all this stuff 6 years ago, and like you said, like I, c- you know, Tesla autopilot. I hear from my friends is pretty phenomenal. um, I'll say this out loud. This is like one of my little gripes about driving. I drive, so I live in Florida and my folks live in North Carolina. It's a 12-hour straight drive up 95, 12 hours straight. There should be a lane on a road like I-95. Like these interstates, these very long highways, there should be a lane. It should be autonomous only because we're going straight. And you should be able to get in that thing and you shouldn't be allowed to steer or gas pedal, and it should go 95 miles an hour, and everybody just gets in and you just are not allowed to drive. So that way no wrecks or any ridiculous shit happens, and everybody gets where they're going a lot faster, and they can do it hands free, but only in that one lane. They should have that on every like major interstate. That's my vision for the future, because like then you take away all the nuance and confusion of making left turns and not running over pedestrians.
Yeah. So that what you just said, I agree. Like highways should have that, right? For Tesla, autonomous cars that have that capability. So you're talking about what, decades of retrofitting existing highways, building essentially glorified HOV lanes all around
Hmm.
major highway. You're talking about tens, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure investment. You're
Hmm.
talking about like connecting these new highway platforms around existing highways, like so that DC DC's way to do it can talk to Baltimore's way to do it, can talk to Northern Virginia, right? So yeah, autonomous driving is going to be here pretty soon, but our ability to lean into it and use it widely in society is going to take a really long time. You know, AI blowing a hole in this or any other industry is going to be the exact same way. Like it's boop, oh my God, here's AI and it's going to change everything for everybody. Oh shit, but the infrastructure doesn't exist for us to actually use it. Come back in 10 years. You know what I mean?
That's a big one.
It's going to be like that.
Yeah, the infrastructure conversation. So I was at Top One. Todd Brown has this mastermind called Top One. I was sitting with his partner.
I'm familiar with it. Yes.
I was sitting with his business partner, Damien, who's a little more behind the scenes, and we were talking about this AI thing, and the infrastructure conversation came up, and I was sitting there. And I was like, you know what's crazy is like there are still parts of the world without running water. You know, there are still parts of the world that don't have streets, and there are still parts of the world that don't have high speed. There's parts of America that don't have high speed internet. Is AI really going to come and sweep through the whole world? And maybe if it's coming out of like a factory like Ford cars where it can be mass produced and then shipped out, but like the infrastructure thing.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, go look at, again, I don't got the numbers, but to your point, go look at global literacy. Go look at how many people have running water. Go look at how many people still go to the bathroom outdoors, right? Like you're talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions of, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but there's so much progress that we can make in easy stuff long before retrofitting every major highway in the United States to be able to allow and make use of fully autonomous vehicles, and not to say that America is going to do, they're going to cure hunger before we put in HOV lanes for autonomous vehicles, because it's going to be a mix, right? But like, I don't know, in my experience too, like researching this over the years and being a part of like some tech trends, like breaking some tech stories over the years, new ideas have a way of like exploding on the scene, getting everyone very excited, causing a really big stir, and then disappearing and falling completely. Like AR, the first evolution of AR VR with the Oculus, for example. When that came out, it was like, oh my God, they have created a portal to another dimension. We are never going to live solely in our existing reality 24/7 ever again. How many people do you know own an Oculus right now?
One, maybe two.
And Apple comes out, they make big splash. Apple comes, because like Apple releases a product, it's going to be great. It's going to work. It's going to be industry leading. It's going to be expensive, but it's going to be, amazing. Like, okay, that was a couple weeks ago. Have you heard much about it since? Not really. Like, so AR VR is going to be a huge part of our future, but I'm not going to sit around and hold my breath and wait for it to get here. It's the same
5G. I remember my early days at Agora, like 2017, 2018, 5G was the thing. We are just now getting 5G phones like 6 years later.
Yeah. And then there's backlash and there's controversy, right? Do you remember like 5G retrofits? Like people were like, oh, it messes, don't touch anything 5G. It messes with your brain waves. It'll give you seizures. And do you remember all that when like 5G was first on the scene? And it's like, what are you talking about? And then 5G just completely disappears and we don't hear about it. And I mean, it's going to be fantastic, and it's going to enable new technologies. It's going to like the next generation of apps and interactivity. It's going to be great. The metaverse is going to need it. Metaverse is another one, right? Remember a year and a half ago, it was like, oh my God, we're not going to go to Walmart anymore. We're going to go to the metaverse version of Walmart and fill our virtual cart. And it's going to be like this experience. And like, I haven't like, I still go to Walmart. Like, I don't like, where's the metaverse? I don't. That's not to downplay any of those technologies. They're going to be it's all going to be fantastic, and it's going to be helpful. It's going to solve problems. It's going to create wealth, all those things. Just don't hold your breath sitting around waiting for it.
Yeah, that drives me nuts with the copy community or the hopefuls, the copy hopefuls, and I don't know, like, should I get into copy? I heard the AI is going to take my job, and it's like, so,
Well, I'm a no. I'm a no. If you're too dumb to draw the conclusions that there's plenty of opportunity for all those things we talked about, hardworking, dedicated, passionate, communicating great ideas, delivering value to readers, right? If all that just slips through your fingers and you're not motivated because of the threat of a specter of AI that could affect your business some years from now, go do something else.
yeah, that's kind of been my answer. And the way that I've sort of summarized this that's been well received is the drum machine. The drum machine can replicate any drum beat at any tempo and insert any fill at any moment with no notice and do it perfectly and get right back on beat. And yet we still have human drummers. So I feel like there's no need for a human drummer. I could program the most perfect drum solo. I could program the most perfect drum anything, but yet we still have these live performers. And I feel like that's kind of uh like a law of nature in a way. And so Tyler is my web designer and does like our thumbnails for YouTube and all. He helps a lot around the business, and he redid our homepage, copysquad.net. So he redid our homepage and take their money. My copywriting guide to help you write copy that really makes you rich was he had like a little descriptive blurb, and he said, "What do you think about this description?" He sent it over because he wanted to have a short little blurb about the book right beside the book on the new website. And I read the first line, and I started to read the second line, and I just paused, and I went on Discord, and I was like, "Is this some Chat GPT shit?" And he was like, "Yeah, how did you know?" And it was like, I can just tell, like I can tell already. Like I've seen like 7 things written by Chat GPT in my life, and I can tell it's just like, what the fuck is this? Why would you say this? Like it made no
Yeah.
sense. Like, I mean, technically it made sense. Like that's the weird thing about robotics. Like whenever you see like a face that's like computer generated and something seems wrong with it, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, technically it has 2 eyes, it's symmetrical, it has a nose and a mouth, but it's like, "Ugh." You can
Yeah.
feel it, the non-humanness of it.
Yeah. You mentioned David Deutsch a couple minutes ago. I think
Mhm.
it might have been his letter. I think he might have written about it recently within the last month or two. I don't want to misattribute it to him. I'll apologize. If he sees this and he reaches out and says that it wasn't him, I'll apologize to him. But it basically comes down to like soul, that ChatGPT can do a lot of things. Like you said, like it can do all the right things. But then if you know it and you read it, you're like, wait a second, that doesn't, it's missing that critical piece. And like, it'll get there, and then it'll be imperceptible from reality. And like, then I don't know, maybe then we get the Terminator, who knows, whatever. Right. But like, that's some ways away. And I don't know, not to belabor the point, but I've seen all that stuff too. And I know how people are like, oh my God, it's coming for all of us. It's going to take everything. It just, yeah, not anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah. So crypto's back up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been an interesting, like, the banks are going to end up controlling it, and there's going to be few platforms left. And, I don't know. It's been the dominant story of the last, what, 6, 7 years at this point on the speculative asset side. And yeah, I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert on anything crypto. I can't tell you where that
Mhm.
one might go. It's confusing as hell, and it has been for some time.
Yeah. I just wonder, like, because I know there's like enthusiasts out there. I know there's people. I mean, there are services out there that sell crypto insight. I've written for some of them, even in present times, not 2017, but recently. And it's like I, I wonder, like, where's the light at the end of the tunnel for the crypto space, man? It just seems like that stuff's like it's just getting beat down and beat down and then beat down again. I don't know what I don't even know how to approach or look at that space anymore. Not your forte though.
Yeah, well, like any speculative asset, like play safe, play smart, you know?
Mm.
Like a like coffee can crypto. Do you remember like the old ideas like the coffee can portfolios, like buy these 10 names, with some, with some portion of your 5% capital, right? Buy them strictly with the knowledge that you're not going to sell like your old coffee can full of like coins or family heirloom, family jewelry or whatever that you
Mhm.
bury in the backyard, and it's for long term,
Mhm.
like coffee can crypto, like buy these 8 names, right? Under the understanding that
Yeah.
they could very well go to zero, but tuck them away. Don't even look at them. Don't touch them for a 5 to 10 year horizon. And one or two of them, you're going to be super, super happy that you bought them. You know, so that's
Mhm.
if you put a gun to my head and I had to, work with an editor, work with a team to build an idea for crypto right now, I'd do something like that.
Mhm. Noted. Hey, what's working now?
AI, AI,
Yeah. Is there anything
AI, de-dollarization, the macro themes, those things. That's I'm seeing a lot of. I mean, you see it, like and I'm sure people watching this, people on your group in your list, like it's you're on the seed lists and stuff, and um, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a geopolitical overhang to a lot of stuff right now too, like China and spying and cybersecurity issues like that. Um, yeah, but no, in terms of like tech and opportunity, there's a ton of AI stuff out there right now.
Yeah, and, like, by the way, is Russia and Ukraine still at war? That's been completely absent, I feel like, from it was all in our faces for the first couple months of that conflict, and then it doesn't seem to be in the zeitgeist any longer.
And that's why things like alternative news sources, publishing industries exist because the news is, you know, Russia Ukraine, as devastating and terrible as that conflict is, probably doesn't draw the ratings, it doesn't draw the clicks that it did a year ago.
Mm.
So we move on to other, outrages and topics du jour while that quietly continues in the background. I mean, again, in my opinion, that's just the nature of the news cycle.
There really is this sort of it's almost like a taste bud. You have, like, a taste for news. You have, like, a taste for stories. Like, there's this the way that I understand how taste buds function is, like, they can saturate to a point where you almost stop tasting it any longer, right? Like, and then there's been, like, if you had some of this and then some of that, the way it activates the buds based on what you recently had. And it's, like, the same thing with, like, news, with, like, stories, with, like, angles.
What you're talking about a minute ago, we were talking about like junior copyright, getting in on trends and finding stories and stuff. What you're talking about is incredibly important. That's an incredibly important skill to refine because it teaches you how to research and like saturation points. Like there's a tipping point of mass awareness and interest, right? But then there's also like you're saying, like the I forget exactly how you put it, but like the news taste bud can be saturated too, and it's like okay, now we're bored with that. We want to go to something else, right? So it's like would I do a drone technology promo right now with a overlay of helping Ukraine and the Russia Ukraine conflict? Probably not, because that we like you just said, like we see that's like that's at that point of saturation where people like they turn away from it because they're looking for something else. And then you have like the moments of like the fascinations too, like the submersible, the thing that the little mini submarine that just
Mhm,
sank
mhm.
by the Titanic. I mean, tragic story, terrible, terrible outcome. Like I'm not making light of that at all. Like it was a terrible thing, but like who ever clicked on a link or paid attention to a news story about people in a mini sub before like last week. And all of a sudden it just like explodes in the headlines. And it's like, these guys are, they're lost and like they can't come up. And it's like, it's captivating, but then, tragedy ensues and the news cycle is right on to the next thing. It's just, it's the nature of clicks. It's the nature of attention span.
It's interesting too, because we can maybe learn from that story because I still haven't read up on it. However, I have seen about a half dozen memes around this submarine thingy. Whatever happened, I'm not exact. I know that one thing. I didn't know if this was part of the meme or if it was part of the actual story. There was a billionaire on board, is what everyone said. So I haven't even read it. But the only thing I know about it is there was a billionaire on board of a submarine and it went down to the Titanic and then there was some sort of malfunction. And then there was tragedy. Either it collapsed or capsized or were they able to resurface? I'm not sure what happened. But you can almost get like I'm like the case study of what is getting resonance with the world because I haven't heard the story. I haven't seen it firsthand. However, through going about my daily life, I have literally encountered, I would say, at least 6 different memes somehow mocking this thing, like with a cartoon or something. And then I've heard someone utter about, I don't know, something about billionaire. And they did it with a negative connotation, as if billionaire people are just wealthy and don't know what to do with their money, so they do dumb things and now they got what they deserved, kind of like they talked about it like that. And it's like you can see in those experiences of how people talk about this event that it's funny or that, well, he's rich so it doesn't matter. You can almost see the villains that they cast. You can see the way they view these events in the world, like people who get the luxury of being able to take off down to the Titanic or something. And you can sort of see these archetypes that people carry and build. And the reason they're archetypes is like by definition, they're societal based. They permeate.
Sure.
That's why they get shared, because when someone made that joke making fun of a billionaire for his tragic demise, I guess he didn't survive. Everyone else got on board. It spread, it proliferated and got around to me, someone who wasn't even reading the story, meaning that
Yeah.
this is like a societal archetype. This is the way they see that event. This is the lens they view the world through.
What did Jerry Seinfeld say years ago? Like, he had that bit about sports teams and like we don't root for teams or players. We root for laundry. Like one week a guy's on this team and then he gets traded and he's wearing different laundry and now we don't like him, but last week we really liked him. Like I mean, the cycle, the attention span. It's like bring everything down to its like lowest. Like it's basest. Like good guys, bad guys, red versus
Mm-hmm.
blue.
Mm-hmm.
Other and inside the group and outside the group and stuff like that. And like that's what gets clicks and that's what commands attention. So yeah, I mean, what you're talking about. I mean, but that's the thing too. That like not to force this back into the industry and like what we do, but like that's what we are interrupting with our messages is something unique and fresh and compelling and well researched that someone hasn't seen before, and it shakes them out of that you know little like outrage or fascination du jour that's in the cycle, and captures their attention, their imagination, captivates them, sucks them in, and like ultimately, leads them to a new experience with a product, with a guru. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's if you're smart and you do the work, like it's not it's not all that difficult to stand out in like the base level of the discourse out there these days.
If you're smart and if you do the work, it's. It was funny because at class, I was at salsa class this week, and I got sucked into this conversation of explaining my job to somebody, and I try really hard to be sort of coy and cute and funny about it, but eventually someone's just really persistent and like, no, seriously, what do you write? And it's like, God damn it. So I write I write promotions for financial newsletter publications, and it's like, what is that? So I eventually have to, like, this person's super persistent. They really want to fucking know the answer and they don't get it. when I finally kind of explain like all of it, she has like this idea like, oh, so like, you put these messages out, like you're like the guys on CNBC, you're like this, like this. And she said, well, does it make you, are you bitter? Like now that you've sort of been on the other side of the curtain, like you kind of see the puppet master and the puppet strings and you understand how the game is played. She was like, are you bitter? And it was like, I'm actually less bitter. I might have been for a time, but like now it's like you sort of understand the game and you sort of, so even like talking about the submarine incident, like I understand human nature now to a degree where I'm not shocked by the reactions. I'm not mad or provoked or outraged. When Andrew Tate hit the scene, I'm not sure if you followed like his super meteoric rise and then sort of plateau, and now he's kind of like, you know who I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
He was literally the most Googled man on earth in such a short, sharp period. And it was like a hot topic of debate and interest among marketers. Well, it was among everybody, but because he was so close to our space, marketers were like battling back and forth about whether he's like good for young men, whether he's a bad guy, whether he's done bad things. And I feel like they're at a point, I don't know, maybe it's just me. You sort of reach like a disconnect where you're just like, but what about that marketing positioning? What about that USP? What about that? Like, look at how he plays the game. I feel like that's kind of like part of our job is to take a step back and not get sucked into the story, not get sucked into the mess and sort of see like the Matrix. It's a meta reference, but like sort of see what's happening before us and all the am I going too woo woo? Am I going off the reservation now? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I'm with you. Yeah. Well, that's how what you're talking. I mean, I use the example of the little submarine, and you use the example of Andrew Tate. Like, you develop a sense for like what's absurd, what's resonating, what has a chance to be sticky. All these different check the boxes. You go down the list of these are you know, and like some news is packaged better or comes across better than other stuff. There's hard news, right? Like, we're going to get a thunderstorm tonight between 6 and 8. We either do or we don't. You know what I mean? Like that's one type of news. But then it's like these like then you have like think pieces, and it's like what does it mean? Like shit like that. And so and like people, it washes over people constantly. You were saying like you weren't even really exposed to the story, but you saw a bunch of memes, right? And you heard people talking about it. People are bombarded. It's multi-platform. It's 24/7. It's constant, like news and opinion and combination of the two. And and people are generally smart, but they have a tough time discerning like what's real and what's not.
Mm.
So I mean, that's what again, like I bring it back to like when we build a message, like it's incumbent on us to make it as sharp and as clear as we possibly can because it's got to stand out from just like wave after wave after wave of, in a lot of cases, junk that people are up against that they're seeing every day. That's what makes a message truly stand out is clarity and precision like that.
Mm. All right. So this has been a pretty solid cast here, Mr. Gentzler. I think we've done pretty well, and we hit some deep topics. We went
When
we
you
went there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we went there. Like we went deep topics.
When
What were
you
you
break
gonna
it
say?
when you break it up, when you come back for the replay, excuse me, I talk too much. I'm getting hoarse. When you come back and you break it up for the replay for the chapters, do the chapters by takeaway. So then when your folks watch it, they can just be like, oh, here's this great nugget. Not necessarily like, we started with salsa dancing and then we went like our personal development, and then we did some history. Just go by takeaway rather than like the actual motions of the story. I think that'd be a cool way to break it up.
Yeah, that was kind of like the one of the cool things here, and I almost want to sort of I've never asked this, but is there any lingering thought? Like this always happens to me. I'll get off the podcast and I'll be like, shit, there was this one thing that he brought up that I wanted to talk about and I fucking let it slide. I let it go right by and I didn't do it. Was there any like lingering thought or question that you had at any point that you'd want to pull up and tackle?
I hope you do that going, that's really cool. Like, hey, before we leave, let's make sure we covered everything. Is there anything that's hanging out there that, that's really, that's cool that you said that. Um, no, this was fun. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate, us being able to figure out a time to do it. It was really nice to talk to you.
Mhm.
I'll say again what I said at the beginning too. Like I have a lot of respect for your work ethic and how seriously you take this. And I'm glad that, you know, of all the people out there, God forbid, of all the people out there who could be pumping out this amount of content like you do and blasting these messages all over the place and talking to Rich Sheffrin and Bart Ford and everybody else and doing these interviews, I'm glad it's you. Because you're serious. You're serious about the work. You're serious about what it is that we do. And I've been watching your work with great admiration, sir. And I wish you the best in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And it means a lot. And you were an early mentor of mine. So this is a happy to have made you proud sort of moment for me. I'm glad. I'm happy to receive that sort of, that's what you took away from what I've been doing. That's awesome. So I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you coming on here and again just sharing so freely and openly. I know I like to take sensitive topics and just drill right into them and just dig deep and just like without any sort of regard or anything. Just be like, hey, so what about their deepest, darkest fears and secrets when you were coming up?
No, no, that's cool too. Like we go through stuff like that, and I mean, you got a lot of your own stuff too, which you've talked about, but like, and then it goes away, or you pivot
Mm,
away from it, or you pack it away because you move on and you don't think about it. You don't talk about it. But then, like in a situation like this, you and I have some history. We've known each other for some time, and like, you pull that stuff out. It can be helpful to somebody else. So
mm.
like somebody in your community, somebody in your group or something is watching this, and they're having some of those questions maybe, or they're some of those doubts or whatever, and hopefully like you doing that and us talking about it, maybe they're like, oh man, I didn't think about it like that. That's helpful to me. So I'm happy to do it. That was cool.
All right, cool. Well, on that note, that's fantastic. I agree with you 100% on that too. I think this would be wonderful for especially up and comers who might have questions and doubts and any insecurities about their career, wondering about AI. We covered a whole bunch. What about FinPub and where it's going? Um, that's it. For everyone who tuned in, I appreciate everyone. For everyone's here for the replay, I appreciate you making it all the way to the very end. Uh, Stay tuned for whenever our next podcast is with whoever it's going to be, whenever it goes down. Until then, peace out, Copy Squad.
Cool. See you, buddy.